There's a silent lie that almost everyone believes about self-confidence. They say some people are simply born confident, while others spend their lives trying to find courage within themselves. But the truth is far more uncomfortable and far more powerful. The most confident people you've ever met probably weren't born that way. More often than not, they learned something that's rarely explained publicly. An ancient principle studied by strategists for centuries. A principle that Machiavelli observed with extreme clarity when analyzing leaders, rulers, and figures who shaped history. He realized something disturbing. Confidence isn't a personality trait, it's a strategic construct. And those who understand this rarely explain the complete process, because once you grasp this mechanism, your way of acting in the world changes completely. Most people spend years trying to feel confidence before acting. They wait for the right moment, perfect security, the approval of those around them. But while they wait, other people are building something different. They are training their own minds, shaping their behavior, mastering their emotions, and learning to navigate reality with strategic coolness. Little by little, they begin to develop a presence that seems almost magnetic. People listen when they speak. They trust them when they make decisions. And the most curious thing is that often no one understands exactly why. It seems like luck. It seems like natural talent. It seems like charisma. But in reality, there is an invisible mechanism behind it all. Today, you're going to understand exactly how this trust is built. Not the superficial version that appears in motivational phrases, but the real process that transforms ordinary people into individuals capable of influencing entire environments. We'll explore principles that have spanned centuries of human strategy, ideas observed by Machiavelli, tested by leaders, entrepreneurs, and strategists throughout history. And when you see this process clearly, one thing will become evident. Trust isn't a feeling that appears out of nowhere. It's a skill that can be deliberately built. The only question that remains is, are you willing to see this game for what it really is? If something inside you awakened while listening, don't ignore that feeling. This channel isn't about videos, it's about memories. Remember who you were before the fear, before the exhaustion, before the silence. Each new video here is a different reflection of your own soul, an invitation to understand what the world never taught you. The power you seek outside has always been within you. If you feel that this journey speaks to what lives silently within you, sign up now. Not to follow yet another creator, but to reconnect with something the world tried to make you forget. Because here, every word was made to heal, each reflection to awaken, and each video serves as a reminder you are not alone on the path back to yourself. Click on subscribe and turn the algorithm into a daily reminder of who you really are. Many people believe that self-confidence is a mysterious gift that some receive at birth and others simply will never have. But those who observe reality attentively and not with idealizations perceive something different. True confidence is built as a strategy, brick by brick, just as an empire rises. It doesn't arise from nothing. It arises from conscious choices, discipline, and constant practice. Think of a general preparing his army before a battle. He doesn't expect courage to magically appear on the battlefield. He trains, observes, tests limits. The same logic applies to anyone who wants to master their own life. Politics, guided by reality, not by ideals, teaches precisely this. Confidence is born from silent preparation. Those who understand this principle begin to act differently. Instead of waiting to feel ready, they begin to prepare the ground. A simple example. Someone who wants to speak well in public doesn't start by waiting to lose their fear. They begin by studying oratory, reading works like Dale Carnegie's How to Speak in Public and Influence People, recording their own voice, practicing short speeches in front of a mirror, Gradually, trust ceases to be a feeling and becomes a consequence of practice. Now, consider something curious about people who seem extremely confident. Often, they weren't born that way. In fact, they learned to act that way even before fully believing in themselves. There's an ancient principle that spans centuries of human strategy. The end justifies the means when the goal is to build inner mastery. This doesn't mean manipulating or harming others, but rather understanding that the human mind responds to action. When someone starts acting with discipline, the mind follows. Imagine someone who decides to improve their financial life. Instead of just wishing for wealth, they begin to study real economics, understand investments, read books like Benjamin Graham's The Intelligent Investor, or follow market reports. Gradually, what seemed impossible begins to become familiar territory. Self-confidence arises because knowledge reduces the unknown, and this connects directly to a classic principle. It's better to be feared than loved. But before that, you must avoid being hated. In other words, confidence is also linked to the reputation you build in the world. There is also a silent dimension to this construction. Many confuse confidence with arrogance or with that constant need to prove one's worth. But true strategists know that the most powerful force is often discreet. They develop a kind of silent self-confidence based on constant inner work. This involves seemingly simple but extremely powerful daily habits. Reading good books, studying human nature, observing how people actually make decisions. Works like Machiavelli's The Prince or Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power help to understand patterns that most ignore. Gradually, the person realizes that life works more by the logic of virtù and fortuna than by chance. Those who develop virtù, courage, discipline, strategic intelligence, become prepared when fortuna, that is, opportunity, appears. And here, an inevitable question begins to arise. If confidence is built this way, then why do some people seem to dominate the game of life while others wait for luck? It is precisely at this point that we enter the next principle. There's a silent difference between those who react to life and those who seem to guide events with a certain naturalness. Most people believe that everything depends on luck, contacts, or favorable circumstances. But those who observe history carefully notice a curious pattern. Individuals who truly build personal power rarely depend on luck. They prepare for when it appears. This is where one of Machiavelli's most profound concepts comes in: virtù and fortuna. Fortuna represents chance, the unpredictable winds of life, those unexpected opportunities that suddenly arise. Virtù, on the other hand, represents the ability to act, decide, and master circumstances when that moment arrives. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, shows us that great leaders never waited for fortune. They spent years developing virtù. Think of someone who wants to prosper financially. Instead of waiting for a stroke of luck, they study investments, learn about solid companies, follow economic indicators, and understand how money really works. Thus, when an opportunity arises, they immediately recognize its value. Imagine two friends who receive the same business opportunity. One of them has never studied the market, doesn't understand risks, and doesn't know how to evaluate opportunities. The other has spent years reading about economics, following reports, studying companies, and observing patterns. When the opportunity arises, the first hesitates, doubts, and wastes time. The second acts calmly and precisely. Not because he was luckier, but because he has built virtù. This principle appears in all areas of life. A doctor who masters his profession doesn't depend solely on natural talent. He spends years studying physiology, observing clinical cases, and practicing diagnosis. A successful entrepreneur didn't start out knowing everything. He read, tested ideas, failed a few times, and learned from each mistake. The same logic applies to those who want to develop personal authority. Books like Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb or The Art of War by Sun Tzu show that strategists always prepare for the unexpected. They understand that the end justifies the means when the goal is to build real competence in the face of life's unpredictability. But there's another interesting detail in this relationship between virtù and fortuna. Prepared people not only seize opportunities, they also create them. This happens because a trained mind begins to see possibilities where others see only chaos. An experienced investor observes an economic crisis and instead of panicking, begins to identify undervalued assets. A prepared professional perceives a change in the market and immediately adapts. This constant adaptability is one of the pillars of strategic thinking. After all, real human nature is not static. It changes, reacts, and reorganizes itself. Therefore, decisions based on real human nature always have an advantage over decisions based solely on hope or idealism. Those who develop virtù begin to move with more confidence, even in uncertain environments. And curiously, the more prepared this person is, the luckier they seem to be. But there is an even more delicate point in this journey. It's not enough to master the external world. It's also necessary to master the inner world. That's precisely where the next principle arises: true emotional authority. There is a type of power that is rarely perceived at first glance, but which defines who truly controls a situation. It's not the loudest voice in the room, nor the most dramatic gesture. It's the silent mastery over one's own emotions. Most people react to the world automatically. Someone provokes them, they get irritated. Something goes wrong, they panic. A risky opportunity arises, they freeze. But those who begin to understand true human nature realize something important. Uncontrolled emotion is one of the greatest vulnerabilities one can have. Machiavelli already warned that decisions based solely on impulses rarely produce lasting results. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, demands strategic coldness. This doesn't mean being as cold as a stone, but knowing when to act and when to remain silent. Imagine a tense meeting at work, where everyone starts arguing and raising their voices. While some react impulsively, there is always someone who remains calm, observing, analyzing. Curiously, this person is usually the one who most influences the course of the conversation. This skill doesn't appear out of nowhere. It's trained just like any other competence. A simple exercise is to start observing your own reactions in everyday life. When something irritates you, instead of reacting immediately, stop for a few seconds. Breathe, observe what's happening internally. It seems simple, but this small space between stimulus and reaction creates something powerful: conscious choice. Over time, a person realizes that mastering emotions doesn't mean repressing them, but understanding their role. Books like Daniel Goleman's Emotional Intelligence or Marcus Aurelius's Meditations help develop this inner awareness. Gradually, the mind learns to respond strategically, not impulsively. This type of mastery creates a different presence. Emotionally stable people convey security without needing to prove anything, and this generates natural respect. After all, those who maintain balance in moments of pressure demonstrate something rare: inner control. There is also a strategic dimension to this emotional domain. When someone remains calm amidst chaos, others begin to project authority onto that person. It's almost instinctive. The human mind associates stability with leadership. That's why great leaders rarely show panic in public. They understand that the appearance of virtue, that is, the perception others have, also profoundly influences social dynamics. Better to be feared than loved, said Machiavelli, but always avoiding being hated. This includes knowing when to demonstrate firmness and when to demonstrate empathy. Emotional authority doesn't mean becoming insensitive. It means using emotions intelligently. A leader who loses control easily conveys insecurity. On the other hand, one who maintains a firm and rational posture, even in difficult moments, ends up becoming a reference point. And interestingly, when someone masters their own emotions, something interesting begins to happen. They begin to understand the emotions of others better as well. At this point, an even more powerful tool emerges: the strategic mask. There's an ancient principle that few admit aloud, but which has always been present in power dynamics. How you are perceived often weighs as much as who you really are. Most people believe that authenticity means showing everything exactly as you feel. But those who observe real human nature realize that this is not always wise. Machiavelli already spoke about the importance of the appearance of virtue. It's not about lying or manipulating, but about understanding that social life functions through perceptions. Think of a leader who constantly demonstrates insecurity in front of their team. Even if they are competent, the perception of fragility begins to weaken their authority. Now imagine another leader who, even in the face of uncertainty, maintains a firm posture, a stable voice, and clarity in decisions. The reality may be the same for both, but the narrative built around them is completely different. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, teaches us that whoever masters their own image masters part of the social game. This strategic mask doesn't mean living a lie. On the contrary, it functions as a conscious armor, used in moments when the situation demands balance and direction. Think of a doctor facing a critically ill patient. If he shows panic, the entire team collapses. But when he maintains a calm and confident posture, he transmits stability to everyone around him. This principle also appears in the world of business, leadership, and even personal relationships. Many highly competent people sabotage their own reputation because they reveal insecurities at the wrong time. This doesn't mean denying feelings, but knowing when and how to express them. A good exercise is to observe historical figures or respected leaders. Many of them developed an extremely controlled public presence. Books like Machiavelli's The Prince or Napoleon Hill's The Law of Success show how great strategists learned to balance essence and appearance. After all, in a complex social world, reputation is one of the most powerful assets someone can build. Over time, something curious happens when this mask is used consciously. It begins to shape one's own identity. Initially, the person may only be practicing posture, discipline, and language, but by repeating this behavior, it becomes a natural part of who they are. It's the same principle that athletes use when developing a winning mentality. They act like champions even before winning titles. The human mind responds to repeated behavior, and it is precisely here that virtù and fortuna meet again. Those who project strength and stability begin to attract different opportunities. People begin to trust more, listen more, and respect more, not because of a stroke of luck, but because perception has changed. However, there is a risk at this stage. Projecting confidence without a real basis can become just empty theater. And it is at this point that the next principle emerges, perhaps the most important of all: real competence as the basis of confidence. There comes a point when appearances cease to be enough. A strategic mask can open doors, create initial respect, and even attract opportunities. But sooner or later, reality demands a simple question. Do you really know what you're doing? This is where many crumble, because confidence without competence is just theater, and life, sooner or later, reveals who is truly prepared. Machiavelli understood this deeply when he spoke of virtù. And virtù was not just courage or audacity. It was the real ability to act intelligently in the face of circumstances. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, requires preparation. Those who master a field develop a confidence that doesn't depend on motivational phrases or empty affirmations. It is born from repetition, study, and accumulated experience. Think of a surgeon entering an operating room. He doesn't need to convince anyone of his confidence. His technical mastery speaks for itself. This kind of security comes from years of study, practice, and careful observation. This principle can be applied to any area of life. Those who wish to prosper financially need to study real money. Not just listen to inspiring quotes about wealth, but understand how markets, assets, and economic cycles work. Books like The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham or Principles by Ray Dalio help build this solid foundation. Those who wish to develop influence need to study communication, human psychology, and negotiation. Works like How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie or Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss are practical examples of this. The logic is simple. Every hour invested in strategic knowledge strengthens inner confidence. Gradually, the person begins to perceive patterns that previously went unnoticed, and this completely changes their attitude towards the world. After all, decisions based on real human nature always produce more consistent results than decisions based solely on enthusiasm. There's also a curious detail in this process. The more someone learns, the more they realize how much there is still to learn. And this creates a special kind of confidence, humble confidence, the kind that doesn't need to constantly prove superiority. This attitude usually generates silent respect. After all, those who truly master something rarely feel the need to flaunt their knowledge. They only act when necessary. It's like a strategist who observes the board before moving any piece. The calculated use of force is part of this mentality. Instead of reacting impulsively, they choose the exact moment to act. And it is precisely there that self-confidence begins to take on another dimension. Because there comes a point when all accumulated knowledge needs to be put to the test. There arrives a point where perfect preparation is no longer possible. At some point, it's necessary to move forward even without complete certainty. And it is in this territory that the next principle is born, acting even without absolute guarantee. There comes a point in the journey where preparation and knowledge are no longer enough. A person may have studied, observed, trained, and planned for years, but an inevitable moment arrives, the moment to act. And this moment rarely comes with guarantees. In fact, it almost never does. Most people freeze right here. They want absolute certainty before making any important decision. They want to know if the investment will pay off, if the project will work, if the career change will yield results. But those who understand politics guided by reality, not by ideals, understand something fundamental. Life never offers total security. Machiavelli described fortune as an unpredictable river. Sometimes it flows calmly, sometimes it overflows and changes everything. Those who wait for the perfect moment end up being swept away by the current. But those who develop virtù learn to act even in the face of uncertainty, not out of irresponsibility, but because they understand that progress requires movement. Think about how many important decisions in history were made without absolute guarantees. Entrepreneurs who started businesses without knowing if they would have customers. Scientists who dedicated years to research without knowing if they would find answers. Leaders who made difficult decisions in times of crisis. They all faced the same dilemma: wait for security or move forward with strategic courage. The principle, "The end justifies the means," often appears here in its most practical form, not in the sense of justifying any action, but in the understanding that progress requires calculated risk. An investor, for example, will never have absolute certainty about the future of the market, but they study companies, analyze indicators, and make decisions based on the best available information. The same applies to someone who decides to start a personal project, perhaps creating a channel, opening a business, learning a new profession. The initial action is never accompanied by applause or guarantees. It is accompanied by silence and doubt. Interestingly, every action taken strengthens something invisible within a person. The more they face the unknown, the more their mind adapts to risk. This creates a kind of psychological muscle. Constant adaptability becomes part of how they see the world. Obstacles cease to seem like threats and become merely strategic challenges. It's like a captain learning to navigate rough seas. At first, each wave seems frightening. Over time, they understand the ocean's movements. This internal change completely transforms how someone moves through life. People who act even in the face of uncertainty begin to develop something rare: psychological autonomy. They stop depending on the constant approval of others. And when this happens, an inevitable question arises: if someone learns to act courageously in the outside world, can they also govern their own inner world? That's exactly where we enter the next territory: the conquest of the inner empire. There's a battle that few people see, but which determines almost every other battle in life. It doesn't happen on battlefields, nor in meeting rooms. It happens within one's own mind. Most people spend years trying to conquer space in the outside world: money, recognition, influence, but neglect the most important territory of all, their own inner empire. Machiavelli, when speaking about leadership, deeply understood true human nature. A prince incapable of governing himself could hardly govern any kingdom. The same principle applies to anyone today. Those who don't control their own impulses, fears, and distractions end up being governed by them. And this manifests itself in very subtle ways in daily life. A person knows they should study more, but is constantly distracted. They know they need to improve their health, but postpone important decisions. They know they have potential, but live trapped in cycles of self-sabotage. Mastering one's own inner empire demands discipline and brutal honesty with oneself. Not that superficial discipline based solely on momentary motivation, but a discipline built on consistent habits. Think of someone who decides to completely reorganize their routine. They start small, but consistently. They wake up a little earlier to study or read something that strengthens their mind. It could be a chapter from Machiavelli's The Prince to better understand human strategies, or a few pages from James Clear's Atomic Habits to understand how small actions shape big results. Gradually, they create internal systems that support their growth. The mind begins to perceive something powerful. There is control over one's own behavior. This completely changes how the person sees themselves. Self-confidence ceases to be just an idea and becomes a natural consequence of daily discipline. But there's an important detail in this process of self-governance. Those who achieve inner mastery also learn to observe their own thoughts with a certain distance. Instead of reacting automatically to every emotion or impulse, they begin to analyze them as a strategist would analyze a map. This type of awareness creates mental clarity, and clarity generates better decisions. This is where many begin to understand the true meaning of virtue. It's not just external skill, but inner strength to choose what really matters. Those who master this inner territory begin to act with more stability in the external world. And curiously, when someone reaches this level of self-control, something begins to happen naturally. The people around them begin to see them differently. After all, those who demonstrate inner mastery transmit silent authority. And this leads us to the last principle of this journey: confidence as a powerful illusion that over time becomes reality. There's a curious phenomenon in human nature that few clearly perceive. Confidence often begins as a kind of illusion, but when sustained by consistent action, it ends up becoming reality. Think of how many admired people today began their journeys without absolute certainty about themselves. In the beginning, they simply decided to act as if they were capable. Not out of arrogance, but because they understood a silent rule of social life. People tend to follow those who demonstrate direction. Machiavelli understood this deeply when observing leaders and rulers throughout history. The appearance of virtue often precedes virtue itself. Those who demonstrate confidence, even in moments of doubt, create a narrative around themselves, and this narrative influences the behavior of others. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, reveals that perception and reality walk hand in hand. In the beginning, it may seem like just posturing, but repeated posturing transforms into identity. Observe how this works in simple everyday situations. Imagine two people presenting an idea in a meeting. One speaks hesitantly, full of doubts, constantly asking for approval. The other presents the same idea with clarity and conviction, explaining the main points with confidence. Interestingly, even though both have the same knowledge, the second tends to be taken more seriously, not because they are necessarily superior, but because the human mind responds to perceived confidence. This is exactly where the principle, better to be feared than loved, but avoiding being hated, gains a modern interpretation. It's not about intimidating people, but about conveying quiet authority. Books like Presence by Amy Cuddy or The Confidence Gap by Russ Harris explore precisely this psychological phenomenon. The human mind learns through action. When someone begins to act with conviction, the brain gradually comes to believe in that posture. Over time, something fascinating happens. What began as a conscious performance transforms into natural behavior. Confidence ceases to be an effort and becomes part of one's identity. This happens because each successful action strengthens the internal perception of capability. It's the ultimate meeting between virtù and fortuna. Fortuna may open unexpected doors, but only those who have developed virtù can walk through them with confidence. And when someone reaches this point, their presence begins to generate a silent impact around them. People listen more attentively, respect their decisions, and trust their direction. Not because they declared power, but because they demonstrated consistency over time. Constant adaptability, the calculated use of force, and decisions based on real human nature begin to guide their movements. And it is precisely at this point that the real question begins to arise in the minds of those who observe all this. Why do those who have truly developed this confidence rarely reveal how it was built? Now stop for a moment and think honestly. How many times have you believed that you lacked something special within yourself to have confidence? How many times have you looked at other people and thought that they were simply born with an advantage that you didn't have? The truth is, throughout this video, you saw something different. Confidence is not a mysterious gift reserved for a few. It is built through conscious decisions, discipline, and understanding of true human nature. It is the result of acting even when there is doubt, of studying while others only complain, of developing virtù while most wait for fortune. Those who understand this begin to move differently in the world. And little by little they realize that what seemed like luck was always preparation meeting opportunity. Now the most important question isn't about theory, it's about action. What are you going to do with this knowledge? Will you continue waiting for the perfect moment to act, or will you start building your own strategic confidence from today? Maybe it's studying something you've been putting off for years. Maybe it's making a decision you've been avoiding for fear of making a mistake. Maybe it's simply starting small, but consistently. Reading a few chapters of a good book, learning a new skill, observing more closely how people actually make decisions. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, begins exactly like this, with someone willing to see the game of life without illusions. And when you start acting with this clarity, something interesting happens. The world begins to react differently to your presence. But now I want to hear from you. Which of these principles most resonated with your way of thinking? Was it understanding the difference between virtù and fortuna? Was it realizing the power of emotional authority? Or perhaps discovering that trust often begins as an illusion that with consistent action transforms into reality? Write in the comments. I want to know which of these ideas most challenged you today. And if this type of strategic knowledge makes sense to you, then subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because here we explore exactly that. Profound ideas about strategy, human nature, and personal power that are rarely explained clearly. After all, those who understand these principles begin to see the world in a completely different way.